So, Ms. Jagade, could you tell us what you know about ATP?
Okay, well, I do teach exercise science here at CAR, and we have spent some time talking about ATP to do with different energy systems and things that we're discussing in our unit. But ATP, in my basic knowledge and what I understand, is it is called adenosine triphosphate. It is the basic energy molecule for all living things. We have it, it's created naturally within our bodies, and it's usually from breakdown of food or other things that we intake, our nutrients that we intake. So primarily from our carbohydrates, our fats, and our proteins that allow within our bodies ATP to be produced. ATP is, like we said, adenosine triphosphate. It is combined with adenosine with three phosphate molecules. And with the breaking off of one phosphate, that produces energy in the body, so allowing muscles to contract.
So can you tell us how this links to physiology and muscle science?
Well, like I said, it allows muscles to contract. So this has to do with energy systems, and there are two main energy systems, which we talked about in class. We have our anaerobic system and then our aerobic system. And in the anaerobic system, there is two metabolic pathways. One is called the ATP-PC system, which is the adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine system, which allows ATP to be readily used. It's readily accessible to be used right away within the body, usually within the first 5 to 10 seconds of workout. And then once that 5 or 10 seconds is up and we are still maybe doing the activity, then the second anaerobic system would kick in, which is our glycolysis system, which is a different way in which ATP is able to be used. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds for the system to kick in, and basically it's from food that has been taken, broken down in our system and stored in the muscle as glycogen. And with that breakdown of glycogen, it releases two ATP molecules along with lactic acid. So that gives us enough energy to get through at least another 10 seconds to up to about 2 minutes or so. And that's usually doing kind of like an intense workout. After that, there's no more means of glycolysis, breakdown of glycogen, and there's no more phosphocreatine floating around the muscle. There needs to be cycles that has to happen in our body to produce ATP. So the aerobic system would kick in. And with our aerobic system kicking in, this is how it's with oxygen that allows for ATP to be produced by going through things called the Krebs cycle. And this allows that ATP to be produced a little bit more often throughout the body so that the body can last longer in a workout, probably up to about anywhere from 2 to 3 hours without even having eaten any other food.
Well, thank you, Ms.
You're welcome. Hope that helped.
So, Mr. Bassi, could you just tell us something about ATP, like your general knowledge about it?
Okay, I don't know very much, but what I do know is that ATP is a molecule that's used, it's coupled with practically every enzymatic process. Every chemical reaction in the body has an enzyme attached to it, and very often to cause the enzyme to work properly, extra energy has to be added in the form of the breakage of the bonds in ATP. So when the ATP breaks down into ADP plus a phosphate group, the release of free energy that results is often used to drive the chemical reactions that occur in the body. Sometimes the molecule itself binds to an enzyme, changes its conformation, so it slightly changes the three-dimensional shape of the enzyme and either activates or deactivates it according to what the body's needs are. So ATP, ADP, and phosphate groups and the energy that comes with it all play a role in metabolism to drive metabolism or to regulate metabolism. And what else? When the body runs out of ATP, all the processes stop. Case in point, when a person dies, you get what's called rigor mortis setting in within about 48 hours after death. It's the result of the ATP being exhausted in the muscles. Because the muscles require ATP to unbind from the proteins, when the ATP is finished, the muscles become rigid. They stay stuck together.
Sir, can you tell us how this comes to play in chemistry?
How does it come to play in chemistry? Well, if you have knowledge of the way molecules interact, then you can see how it helps you to understand the role of subtle interactions between molecules to change the reactivity of enzymes.
Well, thank you, sir. So, sir, what's your knowledge on ATP?
Adenosine triphosphate. It is located in the mitochondria. Which is the powerhouse of the cell, and it's notorious for our energy storage.
So how does this come to play in while you're teaching? How does this come to play?
When you have to run around the entire school and chase people, your adenosine triphosphate better be up, because you're using that as your number one source of energy.
So from your past teaching experiences, how has ATP come into your teaching?
I used to be a former biology teacher, so I had to teach about the mitochondria and the cell and ATP and the value of ATP and the anaerobic glycolysis and the entire cycle, the Krebs cycle and all that.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Pereira, what's your knowledge on ATP?
So ATP is a nucleic acid. It's one of the simplest nucleic acids. It's made up of adenine, a base, a sugar, and a phosphate.
So how does ATP come to play into biology?
Well, ATP is the source that cells use for energy. That's how energy is stored in cells, and then it gets broken down to ADP and phosphate so that that energy can be released and used by the cell for their metabolic functions.
So from your past teaching experiences, what can you tell us about ATP?
ATP is essential for our survival and for the survival of life on Earth.
Oh, okay.
Without ATP, the cells couldn't survive and we couldn't survive.
Well, thank you, miss.
Thank you.
So can you give us a small summary of what you know about ATP?
Okay, so ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate and it's nucleoside triphosphate used in cells as a coenzyme. Hydrogen enzyme currency is a molecular level for energy.
What?
Say what?
C2.
Cintu.
So what can you tell me about the chemical composition of ATP or the shape and polarity?
So the structure of ATP has a purine base, which is adenine and pentyl sugar ribose, which creates adenosine. And hydrogen also has 3 phosphate groups, hence the name triphosphate. And ATP is highly soluble in water.
Can you give us some chemical properties of ATP?
ATP is an unstable molecule in water, which hydrolyzes in ADP and phosphate. The strength in the bonds between the phosphate groups in ATP is weaker than the hydrogen bonds in water.
So when or how do we use ATP in our everyday lives?
So, ATP is very important in everyday lives. It transports chemical energy within cells for metabolism. Hydrogen is the end product in many cellular processes such as photophosphorylation in photosynthesis and cellular respiration and fermentation, in which substrate levels or oxidative phosphorylation plays a major mechanism in ATP biosynthesis.
Is ATP a positive or a negative effect on society?
Of course, ATP is a positive effect to society. ATP is constantly being recycled in the human body and in all organisms. Without it, society and other organisms would cease to exist. We need energy. The ATP that are in us come from carbohydrates such as glucose. We go through cellular respiration to create ATP, which helps our whole body function.